Welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
Wow, that's amazing. That's exactly what a famous starship captain once said. And you know,
Really?
yes, it reminds me of something my grandma used to tell me. Wherever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way. Which, now that I think about it, is what another famous starship captain once said.
What a coinky-dink.
I know. You'd think they'd give them both a show or something. It's amazing.
One of us is Dr. Ali Mattu. That would be me.
And I'm Dr. Trek.
And one of us is a real doctor.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you said that already. Yeah.
No, that's your line.
I don't know. I think that's one for everybody to go on. Yes. Hi, everybody. It's Life Support Live.
Hello. Welcome to Life Support Live, folks. On this week's episode, we are talking about disappointment for a couple of reasons. We want to reassure everyone right off the top of the gate, we will not be spoiling the new season of Star Trek Discovery. We take inspiration, but we won't be talking about really what happened there. The other reason we're talking about disappointment is there's a lot that's happened in the world of Star Trek that might have disappointed our global community. We'll talk about that. But before we get to that, and let us know what are your favorite episodes involving disappointment. But before we get to that, Larry, this grand voyage, this enterprise that we are on to boldly go every week into Life Support Live. What is this for folks who might be joining us?
This ship of Discovery is meant to make sure that we are defiant in our voyages, even as we protostar away. Oh, wait, that doesn't work much.
The protostar is hard to work in there.
I know. Just send me to Cerritos, okay? I'll go buy a car.
Well, you know what? Even if there might be a protostar in this system, Life Support Live will be there.
Oh, okay. Well, that was better than mine a little bit.
I mean, it's still bad, but...
I know. The whole chain was bad. Hey, everybody, listen. If you are new to Saturday mornings with us, Saturday afternoons with us here on Life Support, thank you. Welcome a lot. I don't know how you found us, but you're very welcome. You see, we've got a great chat. The lifers are excellent because we take a theme every week, sometimes based off the new Star Trek. Sometimes we just dream it out of our heads, or we take a character or whatever. And we have a lot of fun with it. We get our geek on with our Star Trek, but we try to, go boldly in uncertain times and maybe give you some life lessons to take away. One of the two doctors here does that more. The other doctor will give you at least one good deep dive on this theme behind the scenes, aside from real life. So buckle up. We're going to have a good time today.
We are. Even if our topics are get real, sometimes we always have a fun way of having fun. I guess that's a little bit of a tautology there.
And I'm going to say that our theme this was a great theme for this week because I was thinking twice too, but I finally got to see the Prodigy episode even. And poor Prodigy, maybe it's a good idea that they're taking a break because it's almost like outside the DNA to be able to focus on an hour and a half a week. But I think this theme actually covers all three.
I think this theme covers a lot this week.
Yeah. There are a lot of themes.
Yeah, but there's two things that I think are not disappointing that I want to mention off the top. Number one is this is episode number 75, Larry. 75!
It's our Diamond Jubilee.
It's our Diamond Jubilee.
All anniversary gifts can be sent to Dr. Trek in care of.
Today we celebrate our Jubilee, a Diamond Jubilee. And it is quite an honor to have...
That did sound Royals, didn't it? I'm sorry.
Been your servant and your public leader in these difficult times that we all find ourselves in. And my people, I wish you the happiest of homecomings. I don't know.
The happiest of Saturdays.
Happiest of Saturdays.
I went to that because when Oklahoma had its 75th anniversary before the centennial, it was the Diamond Jubilee. So that's where my head went to. But anyway, yes. But then that's also what the Queen uses. So
Oh my gosh.
anyway, back to
Oh my.
Star Trek. Back to Star Trek.
Back
Yes.
to Star Trek. Okay, well,
But it is happy 75,
happy
Ollie.
75.
They said it
Larry, I
couldn't be
raise my
done.
coffee to you.
Hmm.
May your nebula always be full of caffeine.
Yes. They said it couldn't be done. Actually, most of them didn't even know it was happening. But
No.
the few that did said it couldn't be done.
Well, happy 75 to you all. Thank you for joining us for 75 of these, whatever they are.
Hmm.
We are humbled.
Increasingly so. Right, right.
Yeah, Rebecca says I can't decide if Ollie's trying to be the Queen or Monty Python. I think it's
Hey, you kids, it's both.
it's a
Yeah.
little bit of both. A little bit of both. Oh, and Larry, the other thing I want to mention right off the top is how'd the open house go?
It was awesome. Mike stayed on for about 2 hours. It was
Wow.
incredible. He was only needed to do an hour, and I was hoping. Usually we'll go over a little bit, but he kept talking. I think he misses fandom contact, and we had the biggest crowd I've ever had. So you guys that weren't, I had 88 sign up, and about 61 made it, and about a fourth of that were our regulars. So we had a lot of new faces,
Nice.
and I hope they come into the portal fold. But no, it was a great hour, and we actually got some. I wasn't after news. I was being selfish. It was for me, and I let people listen. But no, it was good all around, and everybody that was there had a great time also. So including a lot of the folks we've got with us today. So
Awesome. I'm
mhm.
glad. I'm glad it went well.
Thanks again for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, that was some of the good news we had this week. And to
And then the very next day,
and the very next day.
boom.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why, as we open up this briefing room, we often don't. We try to stick to the stories, the canon. But this week, I mean, I think we found a way to do
We're
both, but
moving
we
on.
wanted to talk about disappointment because it's quite disappointing some of the decisions that the Paramount executives made. Paramount, CBS, it's all one vertical, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Viacom CBS. Yeah.
Viacom, CBS.
Or CBS Viacom, whatever the hell it is now. Yeah.
So the decision was made to pull Star Trek Discovery from Netflix, really right before it was about to premiere. It had been promoted for weeks as being premiered in both. Even members of the cast were promoting it. No one really knew. Very few people knew that this was about to
Yep.
happen.
Just had the Destination Star Trek convention, which was planned.
Yes.
Well, COVID delayed. They finally have it. They make a big effort to go promote the new show in England, in the UK, with Europeans. A lot of our folks were there,
Yeah.
and it was and you could tell there was the left hand, right hand thing going on there corporately. But the biggest thing is it's not. They're going to align all the shows on their own platform eventually, and a lot of
Yeah.
people hate that because I've got to pay another streamer. But that was inevitable.
Yeah.
What's a sucky thing about this is that not only did they just promote it and 2 days later said, oh, but you know what? You can't. They didn't give anybody an option. It's not like they said it's moving 2 days. It's moving over to our channel in 2 days. Come subscribe.
Yeah.
That would have been horrendous. But it's as bad to say you can't watch it here and you can't watch it anywhere legally, which
Yeah.
was insane. It's like, why not leave it there until you're ready to launch and then go with everything else?
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's
very
very tone deaf.
disappointing that it was being promoted as it was supposed to premiere this week on Netflix globally. It didn't. No one really knew. Anthony Rapp had a great
Hmm.
set of tweets where he was saying how
Kind of
shocked
took
and
the
sad
lead.
that they had no idea either, that they're surprised by this and how much they love the global community here. So we wanted to at least
And he had been
speak.
at FedCon
Yeah.
the adjoining week in Germany
Yep.
and
Yep.
had been promoting. So yeah,
So yeah, we feel you in the global community here. This is incredibly disappointing, and I think it wouldn't. I'll get to this in the counselor's log, but if this was the plan all along, I think it wouldn't. We wouldn't have the sting that we have now. Um,
Hmm.
if Larry, the plan was always like, well, it'll be on Paramount Plus, but it'll be globally available in January, something like that. At least you have at least your expectations are
Right.
set.
Right.
This was just, I've never seen something like this before, right before a show's about to premiere. I've never seen anything like
Well,
this.
and the first thing that hit me was it's amazing how I kind of resent how the global market has taken over movie creation and planning.
Oh,
I
sure.
mean, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to be racist or culturalist, but it's like so much of like the Star Trek movies, the Kelvin's early, '09 was planned and Beyond and Instead were all
Stick.
planned with the, that's what I call it. Yeah. It's just the acronym Star Trek Into Darkness. That's a
Sure.
lot of syllables, and that's about what I thought of the movie.
It
So
also sounds like some kind of infection you could get
yeah,
from some
or
kind of
or
an
a
away
or a
mission.
early '60s horror movie.
Sure.
Stood.
Stid is
Yeah,
coming for
yeah.
you.
See, um, we called it codename Stid. Um, no, I mean it to me. What struck me right off the bat was how everything is all about the global market and the Asian market, and the other. You can't make a domestic movie for over $2 anymore without thinking of the global box office, which that changed during the Berman era movies and the original series movies. That was not a big deal. It was like it was gravy, but they mainly thought about the domestic audience, and then
Sure.
everybody else was okay, fine. That's a cherry on top. And it's the last 10 years, it's like, oh no, if it's going to be a blockbuster and an epic and a big budget sci-fi, we've got to think of the global
Well,
market. And how that is like not the how that is so backwards from the way at least they were planning this global rollout for Paramount Plus. It's like, why would you leave fans? Because the bottom line here is, and I'm not endorsing any illegal activity, but we have people like us and many more, even in more intensely, who have news sites and blogs and YouTube channels and podcasts who service a global audience because I kept saying it's 2021, not 1991. And you can't have region coded VHS tapes
yeah.
or
No,
even
that era is
DVDs
long gone.
anymore and just keep people in the dark until you're ready
No.
to unveil it.
No,
You
that
know,
doesn't work anymore.
I said I realized this week this was the 25th anniversary of Generations last whatever Wednesday, Thursday,
Oh,
and
wow.
it premiered, in the middle of November, and then the big premiere in London was in February. So like 3 weeks went by, and if you were really active, you could get a pirated tape in London pretty easy from your American friends. And then they had the regional, the
Yeah.
DVD players, like the VHS players, like DVD players later, but people would get region-free tapes, and they'd bring an American VCR over and have a big. My point was people beat it, but that was the way the world worked then, and we've gone to all this trouble now to be simultaneous and global, and
Yeah.
it's like
The
really you expect them to sit for 5 months? What they're saying March for a fraction of the countries that Netflix was in to have
Yeah,
Paramount.
we saw in the 2000s and the early 2010s, as Hollywood started to pursue more of the global audience, that a lot of times the premieres for these films happen first in England, or they happen first in non-American countries, which we felt the sting of that. Like, hey, what the heck? Like the movie's already out in England, it's not out here. And pre-COVID, the years leading up to COVID, we were seeing more of a unification to the release dates, where things were for films.
Parts 1 and 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and three, where
Yeah.
the things were being released at the same time, which is really the only way to do it in a global market
Mhm.
and make it a fun experience for the whole fan community, everyone who loves this stuff. Um, we kind of got to that with Discovery, where there was, if you had Netflix, you could access this thing internationally.
in
Uh,
in one day. It was
yeah,
only one day
yeah,
gap. And Picard on Prime.
on Amazon
Yeah.
Prime, right, right. So most markets were covered. I like how Rebecca said this over here. It's been very unfair. I don't mind it being on the same platform. I don't mind paying for Paramount Plus and
Yes.
the mountain of content that is there. I mind it being dangled in front of us like a carrot, then yanked away. I feel like a cat being teased with a laser pointer. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel you on that, Rebecca.
Teased with a laser pointer, and then the owner goes away for 5 months.
with no real date. I think something a lot of people in the chat are saying is we don't really
Know
know
that it's March.
when.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Rose is saying here, um, that she's not really sure when in 2022 it's going to be available.
And they've got Sky as the partner, Sky cable satellite, whatever, but digital stream, whatever. But again, yeah, there's no people were estimating March, and then Netflix had 188 countries, large and
Yeah.
small, and they're talking about 35 or 44 or some fraction of that.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's the problem here. I have a friend who works for who does a lot of the releases for Disney Plus. Not releasing of content, but releasing the technology in different markets. And one thing she was telling me is how difficult it is to release a streaming platform in new markets and all the regulations and all the rules and the licensing of the content and making sure that no other country, it hasn't been licensed exclusively in that country to another platform. It's a lot of work to scale up a platform for new countries.
yeah,
This isn't some Disney with all the money that they have has been it's been a lot of work for them to do it. So yeah, it's not going to be all the markets like Netflix is right now.
yeah.
It's going to be a lot of work. Christoph says here, so far I've found no official hint when Paramount Plus starts over here, except 2022 and around the corner. Also, Paramount Plus won't start nearly as global as Netflix, which is what
Exactly.
we were
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
I my
hello, everybody. We are talking about Star Trek. We will
we
get to
will
Star Trek
yeah
fun stuff, but
yeah we
this is a
are
big thing for us. And you know what? I had here's a distinction for me, and had no when this first hit. It was an hour, 2 hours before I did Tuesday's live on Tuesday, and I was out of my house because we were spraying for roaches. So I was going to go down to the library like I've done on the road before many times in Michigan and in Oklahoma and different places, and done my Tuesday live. And our local branch library in LA doesn't have little study carrels with a room you can reserve for an hour or two. I was like in shock. So I thought, and I was like overtime already because our exterminators were 2 hours late and still hadn't showed. So I just went to the park over here and worked off my hotspot phone, and the signal wasn't great, but we got it done. Had one interruption because I had a dead battery and had to go recharge, but we got it done. But this whole Netflix Paramount Plus thing blew up about an hour before that, and I had started off thinking, okay, there's too much to do. I'm exhausted from the night before in our open house. I'll just have an AMA day, and then it's like, well, I love having a topic, guys, but I would prefer not to have it be that topic. So we talked about all this that day, and everybody was very hot about it. But my first take that I tweeted about was this thing I was saying about how the film world is caught up on the importance of a global market, and how we're global with our communications, and how they do that partly also to fight piracy of movies. And it's like, why is this awareness not, when you have a big fan base franchise film or series, now a series, why do you not expect that to be the same outcome? Why do you leave your fans hanging out there? Especially then you have a split, you have all our domestics and our so not only do people, they love you, but they're mad at you for being betrayed. Now you've got a split in the fandom in a global world that talks all at once. It's just very tone. And somebody go, oh well, the numbers probably aren't there to worry about it. It was like, really, is that what you would say about a movie release? Would you have a movie these days release and then not come out till for 5 or 6 months the rest of the world that's in a big franchise? Anyway, my first take was like how amazing it is that there's this pardon me, schizophrenia, this split, about how there's the eye on the ball for one end of things on the spectrum in entertainment and not on the other. And then do you even think of the repercussions, guys? Are you just going to brush them off, or you piss me? Because it seems so you're either asked to be a fan and love it, or else go away. Why would you send people away?
Yes, a few
Like,
things.
right now,
So,
when they're in the States and Canada are all bubbling over about it. Yeah.
as Dr. Ali, I feel obligated to point out, schizophrenia does refer to a split but the split is between what's real and what's not real. Not so much like split personality or things like that. That people
A
might.
split between a company that cares about its fan base and a company that doesn't.
Okay, touche. I'll give you that. Alonka Liska said,
Mm,
"I'm a Star Trek fan
okay.
for 55 years. It was my family. It kept my bipolar disorder stable. It brought me hope, joy, and curiosity for science and space. But now I feel betrayed by Paramount. I feel treated like dirt. It feels like losing family. Taking of Discovery away from Netflix worldwide was a very stupid idea. You don't kick your fans in the face just 2 days before the release of the new season." Yeah, absolutely. A few people have mentioned how it feels like
Yeah.
a betrayal.
Well, and that tweet that I talked about the film, really, I did that to explain. I was like, I almost thought, okay, the global fans are going to grieve and mourn, and I want them to see that I hear that. And I think it's not only unfair and disgusting, but it's pretty stupid business
Yeah,
also.
it's because it
Yeah.
drives. It's gonna drive the piracy.
But
And
my first couple of tweets were really meant to be for the Americans to say, you're going to see the worldwide fandom really pissed off right now, and here's what it's really about. And you may think they're just like, oh, feeling jerked around. It's like, no, the bigger thing is it's affecting them, and it's going to affect us because now your friends around the world are either going to have to pirate the thing or they're not going to talk to you, or they're going to
yeah,
go quiet, or they're going to
yeah.
be or they're going to be pissed at you for you get to see it and they're
Yeah.
feeling like second class
Well,
citizens, and that's.
the whole season will likely be over by the time Paramount
Yes,
Plus is available, which is
they'll be
incredibly
halfway through
unfair.
Picard.
Yeah, it's really
But
unfair
that's prime.
for
Yeah.
anyone who wants to experience the serialized storytelling and the surprises that are around in the show. It's gonna be really
Mhm.
disappointing, frustrating, anger-inducing experience. Liam says over here, the global fan base. It is a global fan base. The world is not U.S. centric anymore, and people are talking about all their region logs and how this stuff is just not. It's not possible anymore. You can't
Well,
keep this
they're
stuff.
pissed at they're mad when even the promos are run online. All the global fans are like, "Really? You have to geo block the trailers, guys?" It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, it's marketing.
yeah,
Come on, it's a commercial. Why,
yeah.
why
But the
geoblock?
the bottom line to my whole story about Tuesday and tweeting was that I was really immediately thinking the American fans, like all my friends and fans overseas, wherever they are, and a lot of them are here with us today. They all know because everything I Portal 47, I've set it up to be international. Everything else we do in the middle of the day, so that the global fans can all be with us
Yeah,
together, which I think is
it's
awesome.
is why we
Because
have the show at this
everybody,
time
yes,
and not in
everybody
the
brings their
evening.
point of view.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
what I was tweeting for was really to the Americans, so that a lot of the rest of fandom who aren't in my close orbit are going to see this and know what's going on. So lo and behold, I wake up Wednesday morning and everybody's tweeting at me to say that the BBC's website, the news, not on air, but their news website had used my first tweet in their story. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I wasn't even talking to the British, or the overseas fans, but okay. And then their headline said, Star Trek fans angry. And then all the things would come up and say, tweet from Larry Nemecek. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not, I just as long as the world knows I'm not being angry. I'm trying to be, a journalist and let one part of the world know what the other part of the world is thinking and feeling. So it's like, I hope none of my American colleagues with the keys to things look at that and go, oh, what's Larry? But thank you for being inflammatory there, Larry. It's like, no, read my tweet. But anyway, apparently that hasn't happened.
Read my tweet. No more Discovery. Libby here says, "Where's the Ferengi when you need them? They would find a way to profit."
And the
With
Great River would provide.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just from a business sense,
You're
this
welcome, Libby.
this is not the greatest. It's not the greatest thing because this is going to drive piracy. It's very easy to acquire this content if you're looking for it, and I think what the people who really want to watch it will find a way to watch it, or they'll VPN. They won't do
Mm-hmm.
piracy, but they'll
Mm-hmm.
VPN, and maybe they'll purchase Paramount Plus or share accounts or all that kind of stuff. I think what this not only does it.
Ollie, let me say real quick. I know a lot of fans have already said, basically, Jesus Christ, when you come over here, I'll buy the channel. When you come, or when the
Yeah,
DVDs
yeah,
are out, I will buy the DVDs. But why are you making me sit for 6 months in 2021?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
They know
What?
that commerce supports they don't want to, they're not out to, some people are.
Yeah,
I've seen people go, hell, I'm going to, but most fans go, shut up and take my money, or show
yeah,
me and take my money, or take my money now, show me, you know.
yeah. I think so not only does this frustrate the people who want to watch it at the same time, but it also I think it really harms growing the fan base, the people
Hmm.
who would watch Discovery because it's just available and they're curious
It's
about
there.
it.
Hmm.
I think it's a lot of those people who now just won't access it and won't see it, and so it's 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 so frustrating and so disappointing. So we feel you, folks. So our policy here in Life Support Live, we are going to take inspiration from the new Discovery episodes, but we're not spoiling it for you, folks. We're not going to reveal
Which is what
any.
we did during Lower
Yeah,
Decks.
yeah. I think we might talk about it a bit. We might even talk about the new Discovery even less than what we did last year,
Hmm.
because that was a time when everyone could watch it. So we're not going to reveal any details besides saying there is some experiences of disappointment in this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery.
Yep.
There are characters who are disappointed in what happens.
And I was going to say, as I saw, I don't know if you said this up front when we were actually working on this, but later on, I finally got to see the Prodigy episode, and there's disappointment in the Prodigy episode
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think this is it is right there for us. This is this week's theme. So Larry, let's dive into it. I think
Yep.
there's a
Yep.
lot of great examples throughout all of Star Trek that we can dive into, and let's get started here.
We have a frame from Discovery, which is not spoilery because she's
No,
been in all the promos.
no.
Yes.
So for those of you who have seen it, um, one person in this shot is disappointed. I don't know if there's more I
It's
can
it's
say.
this has been promoted. This is the new president of the slowly rebuilding Federation. And I've forgotten her name already, Nikar or something, whatever. But she's disappointed. She and Burnham have an interesting time here on a mission, and my God, um, excuse all that. Anyway, yeah, but they're disappointed in each other. We'll just say
Yes,
that.
yeah, yeah. I think that's fair to say. And so that moment,
Rilak, excuse me, I got to use these damn names. Lara Rilak, and that has been out. I'm not spoiling anything.
so since
And she's half part Bajoran, part Cardassian, part human,
yeah,
which has been out also.
yeah, 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 which is Charlotte's question right over here. Which is actually one of the things I really like about Discovery being so far in the future is you can do things like that.
It's its
Um,
first best destiny. They never should have started where they did. But anyway,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, no, I know. Um, Unless Brian Fuller got to do what he wanted to do,
Mhm.
which would have been cool to see that
Hop it every
yeah,
every
hop
season
every
was a hop.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But there's a lot.
Hop every season.
Time jump every year. Uh,
That was Sound of Music, by the way. But the
oh, I
music.
know, I know what
Climb
it
every
was.
mountain. Okay.
That's my daughter's favorite.
Ford every Chevy. Okay.
That is my daughter's probably her first favorite movie was The Sound of Music. Do you know, Larry, that the hills are alive with The Sound of Music? Did you know
Especially on the murder planet named from 5 Minutes Larry in Prodigy. Oops, I didn't say that.
that? So let's talk about disappointment here. And Larry, there's so many examples where we could begin over here. There's
Now,
so
as always, I wanted to put some. I asked you right at the bat. I said, okay,
yeah
disappointment, but at what point do we draw the line between disappointment and feeling betrayed,
yeah
or disappointment going to anger, or disappointment?
yeah
Disappointment to me feels like a low stakes. I don't want to say watered down because it's a very definitely a viable feeling, but disappointment can lead to much higher, much more intense, and I think, as you said, much more personal feelings. And to me, so disappointment is like a lower stakes, less personal
yeah
situation. It's
yeah.
definitely a feeling. Maybe you don't want to go murder someone over it, or feel like it, but yeah, but it's
Yeah.
definitely a feeling.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one that we haven't really talked about on this show. And one of the things we often try to do with Life Support Live is tie it back to the real world that we're going through. And so there's obvious tie to fandom, but there's also a tie to the pandemic. Larry, here we are, 75 episodes later, many, many months, over a year, still living through this pandemic. And while it's changed and it's in some
Hmm.
ways it's improved, in some ways it's gotten worse, it's mutated, it's changed. There's still a lot of problems here, but I think it's very fair to say that I'm a bit disappointed. We are here at the end of 2021, still talking about
I saw
this
the charts on
pandemic.
the 1918 flu, and they had like waves, but the waves finally went away after like a year and a half, and they didn't have smart science. No, I mean, they finally had people all complying with what they needed to do to get, even though it was early days, a whole new world and a whole new scary thing to people back then. They still had people fighting. They had people fighting over. There's this famous case example of St. Louis and Pittsburgh, I think, and one city went all in on lockdowns and mask wearing, and one thumbed their nose at it, and one was. They were two case examples of extremes, and they could see what happened easily over that time. But basically, right there now, the long term. I really enjoyed reading how the long term effects of I won't call it the Spanish flu anymore because it wasn't Spanish, but the 1918 flu, they had no idea in the medical science of the day, the science and the biology, that 10 years, 15 years later, there would be like long 1918 effects. They had new spin-off diagnoses.
Yeah.
There was a lethargy, like a really weird lethargy that hit people in the later 20s. If you had had the flu and then recovered from it and didn't die from it, 10 and 15 and 20 years later, these after effects started to pop up of diagnosis. And apparently the early ADHD research, or what became ADHD, were studies and drugs that were being studied coming out of the pandemic flu. But there was a lethargy, and I saw some old like 20s black and white films of patients and doctors that were kind of scary, where people they were alive and very much conscious, but they had no energy and they were just totally, like rag dolls. But my point is, that was the first time we not only got through a worldwide pandemic that was like globally discussed and talked about and attacked, but then we saw long-term effects. And one of the things out of our current situation is they're starting to talk about long COVID and congratulations, you survived. Sorry, you survived. And there are going to be after effects coming for a long, being discovered and treated for a long time, even if you survive. But this thing about it not ever ending its pandemic phase and just become, what is it, endemic, like the
Endemic,
flu,
yeah.
where we just get shots because we didn't beat it down at the beginning the way it could have been beat down, even without a vaccine yet. So anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
there is no
we
flattening
said
of the
we'd do this
curve.
podcast for the duration. The duration might be longer than we.
I don't even know
That we
what that means anymore. Um, yeah, it's that flu did sort of burn itself out, and I think one of the big differences here is we are so interconnected, and mutations like Delta can start in one part of the world and then very quickly become the dominant strain within weeks or months. That I don't think we saw in the late 1910s.
Hmm.
That it's a different world we live in. So there's that theme of connection too. But let's get back to Star Trek here.
Oh yeah, Star Trek.
Many reasons why we're talking about Star Trek and disappointment. And so the first is it's a bit of a personal one, Larry. Let's talk about two of our most beloved characters right over here.
This is a very famous frame from the wide shot. Kirk is really, over to Sarek's side, and McCoy is just past Spock. But I was trying to find most of this episode, and yet we know Sarek being disappointed in Spock's actions. They didn't talk for 18 years until this episode, and they really didn't talk that we know of until Star Trek 3 and 4. But it was amazing how this shot, I was trying to find something that gave a feeling of being father's disappointment in son. And there's not really a good scene. The only one they're really all together in is either when they go to find him and question Sarek about the dead Tellarite, about Gaff, and then he has his heart attack. And then after that, Sarek's in bed the whole time. And then there's the greeting. And I just realized if I cropped Kirk and McCoy out, it's totally Sarek looking disappointed at Spock. It's kind of like, oh, what a mood shock here all of a sudden. So it's very focused. But yeah, and you know what? I thought I think I've said this before, the troubled first year of Discovery, the one thing I thought they added to canon and they added to the universe was doubling down on not what a weird family Sarek had, if you stop to think about it. He had two Earth wives. He had kids by one. He had a prior son that was a foster brother to everybody else. Then we have the foster sister, in the family. But both of the later kids, and I don't know, maybe Cybok too. Who knows? We're waiting on that one. But he had manipulations and disappointments with both of his kids relating to the Vulcan Science Academy.
Yes.
And the one thing about Discovery just layered on what we already knew about with he and Michael. Really just piled on to what we knew about he and Spock, only in a different way. Yeah. Spock didn't take the choice. It's like he put all of his eggs in Michael's basket, and then they turned her down.
Yeah.
So it was, anyway. But yeah, disappointment for Sarek in a lot of ways.
What a complicated person
Mm-hmm.
he is. Right. Charlotte says over here, I'm still holding out hope for a Vulcan soap opera featuring Sarek and his family, and I would love to see that. Maybe we'll see more of that in Strange New Worlds, but it is he really strikes me as someone who so wants diverse inclusion and understanding, and also very much struggles when his expectations are not met, whether from his children or the Vulcan Science Academy. He's a complicated person. Like, why are you disappointed in Spock here? He's half human, half Vulcan. He's doing his thing, and he's doing his thing quite well. Frequent disappointment, and then unification, and then estrangement, which we see going into Star Trek: The Next Generation, and the unification over there. So, I think, Larry, they need a good family therapist. That family.
I'm waiting for the Strange New World visit or not Strange New World. I'd love to see a one-off special with young Spock and young Michael, and then crazy older brother Cybok bops back in. It's kind of like what's his name on the first season of Happy Days, the older brother that was in college, and you saw him once or twice, and then never again.
Monday, Tuesday, Sarek days. Thursday, Friday, Sarek days.
They're sure not Cybok days. Okay.
I would love to see Cybok come again. I
would love to see him just bop in random, a flashback on
like a sitcom. He kind of goes through the turbo lift, and the audience claps like, "Hey!" like Kramer showing up in Seinfeld. But speaking of Vulcans, Larry, if I can do a bit of a time jump backwards.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Enterprise here, because if we're talking about disappointment and we're talking about the Vulcans, the Enterprise series really comes to mind over here. So one of the things, this is from the episode Fallen Hero, but I
Oh,
think
good. You knew that.
I knew that because that's what you named the thumbnail. But don't tell our audience that.
That's what TrekCore named the thumb because it is. What a concept.
One of the things that made me think about Enterprise and this theme is there's a constant disappointment here between and frustration, I should say. And I'll talk about some of the differences in the counselor's log, but there's a constant disappointment between the Vulcans and the humans, and the humans and the Vulcans. It is very clear to me that the expectations these people have for each other are not aligned here,
There's
Larry.
a lot of disappointing going on.
Yeah, consistently. It's a very long road for them to get from there to here.
Well, some would say that road is like never ending. If you look at the original series, is 100 years later, 100 years after Federation founding, and 200 years after First Contact, and the Vulcans never deigned to tell the Federation Starfleet medical database about Pon farr.
I know.
You know,
What's going on there? It seems like these are two groups of people who don't. It takes a long time for them to really trust one another, and to.
Yeah, I almost think that leans more on the Vulcans. I think the the Earthers are more transparent, we would say now, and I think the Vulcans are more reticent. So,
Charlotte, I'm cracking up here. She says, "OMG, can you imagine Deanna trying to do family counseling with Spock and Sarek? She'd probably lose it and call them both jerks like she did with the Doctor and Zimmerman." Maybe they need a little bit of that.
And then she would call in Amanda or maybe Cybok to referee the thing. That would be funny.
Oh my gosh!
The way she did with the Doctor, yeah.
And Libby says, "What family in Trek couldn't use a good family therapist?" I think the Cisco's end up in a good place. They definitely could have used one in the first half of DS9.
Right, the traumas.
Yeah, but I think they end up in a pretty good place.
The way Cisco handled figuring out that his mom was an alien.
Oh, sure, there's that.
Yeah, alien inhabited. Yeah.
Okay, you're right. They could have definitely used a good family therapist.
I mean, the trauma was something to begin with, but yeah.
Definitely Jean-Luc and Robert could have used one instead of mud wrestling. Yeah, I guess pretty much.
Yeah. But now here we're drifting from this is what I was saying. We're drifting from disappointment back to trauma.
Back on topic.
Trauma was our very first topic. So
yeah. So let's talk about Fallen Hero again, Larry.
Yeah. This is Valar, not to be confused with Valas, who was the Vulcan who was actually the Romulan spy. This is Valas. I mean Valar. I just did it. Or Vilar, depending. If you're an Okie in the Federation, you'd say Vilar, but it's probably Valar. Yeah. Not to be confused with Velour, which was a whole other thing. Yes.
Yes.
Star Trek. Not enough coffee in that nebula for you, apparently.
Oh, never. There's never enough, Larry. Although I do I have more in my French press here? I just bring this whole thing with me so I can keep myself refilled.
You just have your own press conference. Is that it?
Okay. Moving right along here.
But that's a good choice from Enterprise, yeah.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I'm wary about having these themes that we go on all day anyway, but we could really go on all day with some of these. So I was trying to put some brackets, some guardrails around it. And again, lower key than when things expand to trauma or betrayal or destructive outcomes to deal with your disappointment. Then it goes beyond the realm of just, to me, disappointment, like you were saying.
Yeah. Zahir says, Ali's a wharf of coffee drinkers. Good coffee. Nice house.
That's nice house. Yeah.
Moving right along, can we jump to the next generation here, Larry?
Let's jump.
So one of the things that you noticed
Oh boy.
was a lot of the themes seem to be related to guest stars, and
Well,
this.
I mean, part of it is Star Trek and its perfect people, and it's like if somebody's going to dramatize disappointment, they leap immediately to betrayal or anger or something really strong, and to keep things back to disappointment was almost like a challenge. To keep things in a lower, like we were talking,
Yeah.
was almost like a challenge. So part of the time that it was easier to find guest star examples and guest character
Yep.
examples than.
Yeah, and this was from the episode Haven.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Again, you're reading the file names, huh? No, that's Wyatt Miller that was supposed to be the intended betrothed of Deanna, even though he's human.
Yeah.
And she's part Beta Z, but her all Beta Z mother, Loxana, had her set up in an arranged Beta Z marriage, which the wedding is nude, but before that it's kind of medieval because he's human. So somehow Loxana got her hooked up with human parents' kid.
Yeah.
But Wyatt is thinking he's disappointed not so much that the wedding doesn't happen but that Deanna doesn't when they finally meet. That she doesn't match the image of the woman who's been the face that's been in his head that he's been, driven to draw artworks of, and he's disappointed.
You see, I mean, you pulled the right screen grab for that. You see that in this moment.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah. Scott helped me this week.
No, this one's perfect, and this is, I think this is a really great example of disappointment because
like manageable disappointment.
Well, and it's specific to expectations that this one person had about someone else or about the future or about what's going to happen, and those expectations were clearly not met, and the reality is very different from what he had imagined, and not only imagined, but Larry invested a lot in. He invested a lot.
All that art paper.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get paper in the 21st century. You can do it on pads, but
right.
Actual art. Yeah, actual art. If you want to do a bespoke on a piece of paper, it's expensive, but not really expensive because the economics of future are different.
Right.
But you're killing a tree.
Those replicator paper files are somehow complex, more so than 3D printing. Yeah,
it's like getting a fountain pen nowadays. You can do it. It's gonna take a little bit of work.
A working telegraph today is not the easiest thing to find.
Oh, probably not. I wonder if it even exists. It must somewhere.
Well, outside of a museum, you mean?
Yeah.
Like a new one?
Yeah.
I don't know. There was a time a year ago when you might have been able to sell stock in a modern telegraph. I don't know the way things were going.
But I think this kind of ties into a lot of the stuff we were talking about now at the top of the show is when you have these long-term expectations about what's going to happen, the bigger the expectation, the bigger it's not met, the bigger the disappointment, which is, I think, something that everyone's had with Discovery. Everyone's been looking forward to it. It's been, and it's
season one.
Or season one?
Of Discovery.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well.
Or Star Trek 09. Well, somebody actually.
The Kelvin timeline.
Scott was talking to me about helping me a little bit last night, and one of the things I broke into was like, well, we were talking about something about some of the times we've had it's a custom thing. We try to bring it up to help everybody with their feelings every time there's a new Trek series or a new movie, especially a new crop of producers, about how many fans are disappointed or spectrum over to angry about what the new Star Trek looks like, and it's like they're so invested and passionate that they're scared of something being wrong, and fearful, and that whole ball of wax, that snowball that on that from disappointed to angry or even crestfallen, whatever, depressed. But that's a manageable thing that happens because something shifts and there's something new until you get used to it, and then it looks laughable. Like all the old school fans who were mad because Next Gen looked like it was replacing Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in their hearts, even though it wasn't. It was actually accepting them and moving on. But that wasn't the point. It was like, what's the show in front of me, not what's in the canon background. And how that happens, people were pissed about Spock being killed off, and every new thing that's come along, a lot of fans were pissed. I've talked about this, I think, on a K3, mad about the third season in Freiburger because something felt different. They were being squat and smashed by Paramount cutting their budgets and the timing and everything. But fans didn't know that. They just knew that everything was looking brighter but cheaper. And they didn't like the way Spock was being written, and they blamed the third season producer. And there was a chunk of fans all through the 70s that said they weren't going to accept now we would say, I don't see the third season as canon. But back in the day, people would say, I don't accept the third season because they bastardized Spock. He would never talk to Droxine that way in Cloud Miners openly about Vulcan sex, yada, yada. But every era has had people, because you're so invested, it's easy to be disappointed a little bit. So,
yeah. And to that I say, on this Diamond Jubilee, do not be crestfallen. Rejoice yourselves, for we will find a way through.
No, back of the hand wave. Back of the hand wave. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Thank you, Python. Things of culture I learned from Monty Python.
I hope I'm not offending too many monarchists out there. Although I doubt we have many in our.
Damn! There goes our demo. All of our monarchists in the audience. Yeah. We were the king of monarchist following podcasts and stream shows, but
for Star Trek fans, for monarchists who are also Star Trek fans,
right?
Also interested in Mindolf. Yeah.
King of that. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Larry, I want to talk about Voyager. Speaking of disappointment, there is a lot of disappointment among our characters, and I love
especially early on.
Oh my gosh. I love this image you pulled from Eye of the Needle.
Yes.
So this is the episode. Is this the episode where they try to use a transporter to beam to the that Romulan space?
Scott. But yes, they
Yeah.
Well, they think they've established contact with a Romulan through a micro wormhole.
Yes.
And they try to expand the audio channel to an actual thing, and he beams in with them, but they figure out that they're out of phase time-wise, and he actually died like 20 years before. Something.
Which is I really love this episode. This is one of the early. This might have been close to the end of season 1.
No, this was like 6th or 7th show out of the gate.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, this was real early. This was probably one of my first favorite episodes. Maybe because I just felt very comforted seeing a Romulan.
And who played the Romulan?
Oh, I don't know who played the Romulan.
Vaughn Armstrong.
Oh, really? Hot dang!
No, I'm lying. Yeah.
I did not. I did not know that.
Keep you on your toes.
I did not know that.
Well, that's the tiniest K3 of all. Reading you a guest credit, but okay, I'll take it.
It's a really fun episode.
It was 107, yeah.
But this image really captures a lot of those episodes where Voyager comes close to some type of miracle technology to get them back to the Alpha Quadrant. Whether it's a wormhole or transporter or new propulsion technology, something that might be their ticket home. And you see this most, I think, with Harry. He seems to be the consistent character, and this will. I'm gonna tie this in the counselor's log, I promise. But he seems to be the character that most often experiences the greatest amount of disappointment. Larry, I do think, on this occasion of the Diamond Jubilee, that he's.
I wish I'd never mentioned it. Now, okay.
That he's also the most he psychs himself up the most. He builds up the greatest expectations of potentially being home tomorrow to play his clarinet for his parents.
Well, he's one of the youngest one. He's an ensign. There's probably younger ensigns in there, but not one with lines. he's and not he is the ops manager. He's the wonder boy who gets to be the ops manager more than senior officers. But he's one of the youngest, and then he's like such a big homeboy. He lived with his parents and played the clarinet for them and everything. So yeah, Harry Kim was forever disappointed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they go through the litany of his, holodeck girlfriends and all of that. So
Yeah.
I'm so far behind in the chat, by the way. I am so far behind in the chat, guys. I could spend the whole game. I have the 9 o'clock OU game over here just out of sight. I could spend the whole day just catching up on the chat here.
Well, Tobias and Dan also talked about their love of the Kelvin movies, and I share that as well. But Larry, you did talk about how disappointment with like expectations of new Star Trek. That's something we've talked a lot about.
Well, and I
here.
think social media has amplified that. So I think the Kelvin movies were hugely disappointing. And I tried to tamp it down. I said, look, these could be excellent. My point with the Kelvins was you could love every second of the film, but it's still a film. And we'd had by then 4 years of no weekly Trek. And I'm like, guys, gals, it's going to be 2 hours and you could watch the 2 hours over, but it's not having an hour a week for 26 weeks.
Well, and my thing with the Kelvin timeline movies, I love them for what they are, and what they are tentpole movies. It's something that the original films never quite were, and by original I mean not the original cast. I mean the first 10, the prime timeline movies. They were never quite designed to be summer tentpoles. Some were incredibly successful. Wrath of Khan continues to. I was just watching. I'm catching up on For All Mankind. I really the Ron Moore show on Apple Plus.
The alternate future Apollo era, post Apollo era, right?
Yeah, I love the show, and in season 2 they have a great Wrath of Khan joke, where one character is mad at another. They're married, and the husband says, hey, so I saw Wrath of Khan is playing down the street. You want to go? And the wife says, I saw it last week. And he goes, oh. And she goes, yeah, it's pretty good. Spock dies at the end. And then she just walks away because she's so angry at him for what he's been doing. It's a great... And he's just... Camera closes up on him and he's like... It's great. It's a great moment. Well done. Ron Moore's team, well done there. But why did I bring up For All Mankind? There was a reason I was Wrath of Khan. So Wrath of Khan was successful, and to various degrees. Star Trek 4 was a pretty big success. All Star Trek First Contact was commercially did quite well. But Larry, they were never designed to be summer tentpoles. Tentpole meaning they were
rewards. They were cherries on top for an aging cast. They were rewards for doing a good job. Both of the movies eras. But that's what the 80s and the 90s gave you.
Yes.
That's before the whole global, oh my gosh, what do we have to think? It was just like, let's get more money out of them. Let's give them more fan moments to an audience.
I mean,
it's like a promotion. At the same time, we've got to put our eye on the next thing. So we'll put you guys out to pasture with movies.
Maybe the only film that was really designed to be more of a tentpole was the motion picture, since that was kind of a response to Star Wars, the first Star Wars film. But like, what I mean by a tentpole is these movies that are supposed to lift up the studio's revenue for the entire year. They're supposed to hold up the tent. They're supposed to hold up the company. Star Trek was never had the budget, it never had the marketing, it was never designed to be those things until we got the Kelvin timeline.
They took what they got. They loved calling them the family jewels in the 80s vernacular, and they knew that.
And so I love the Kelvin timelines because this is, if you want to see Star Trek as a tentpole, which means it needs to work for a very broad audience, a non fan audience. It needs to work globally. It needs to have big stars. It needs to have big effects. It needs to have a story that is very digestible for a large group of people. That's it. This is what Star Trek looks like as a tentpole. So I like it for that. I see it more as a roller coaster ride than anything else, and I enjoy it for that. So I wasn't disappointed in the Kelvin timeline, but if you were coming in expecting something like Wrath of Khan, Undiscovered Country, First Contact, it's not
Character
that.
moments that made sense. Okay.
Well, because you're invested in the characters, right?
Yeah.
You
No, it
know,
was. There were a lot of people pissed that it was an alternate universe, but I was relieved. It's like, oh
hmm
yay, they can do whatever the hell they want to,
oh,
and
it's
it
brilliant.
doesn't matter.
I
Yeah.
thought it was a brilliant decision to make it a different timeline.
It we treaded water for years without helping the big picture, but fine, kept it going. Made a lot of people fans, and brought a lot of legitimacy of Star Trek to the mainstream, the critics' world and the mainstream media and all that. So
So speaking of timelines, let's get back to the Prime one here, and let's talk
yeah.
about Deep Space Nine a
Because
little
so
bit.
could I go personal on this one? I just
Always.
wanted to say that this was so many times we get to personal disappointments, they become these life altering things unless they're guest stars like Wyatt Miller. But in this case, I wanted to say, Quark had a lot of things going on. He may have thought he should have been Nagus or more so than Rom. That's a big deal. But one of the things I thought was disappointing for Quark, and he doesn't let a lot. He's a tough guy. He doesn't let a lot of things bother him. But um, to know that he had a crush on Dax not once but twice, I just think that, but there's like the personal disappointment, and a lot of times people spiral into depression or anger or whatever. But that's a case I thought where Quark had a personal relationship disappointment and it didn't wreck his life, but he still carried the disappointment. Does that register on our topic today?
I think it does.
Okay.
I
Well, you're
think.
the doctor. I was trying to, in my choices, I was trying to do a range of disappointments. Like, and if this spiraled out of control, what would it go into? Would it go into anger? Would it go to betrayal? Would it go to depression? Would it go to, suicide? I mean, what would this kernel of disappointment, if allowed to fester, go into? And some of the cases I tried to go to weren't the ones that went to an extreme, because we talk about the extreme a lot. I was trying to look at the ones that didn't become extreme, and maybe then you would in your bit would talk about in the counselor's log and away mission talk about keeping things, dealing with disappointment so they don't get bigger. And so all these cases I've tried to do are cases where people handled they registered the disappointment and handled it. Hopefully, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Oh, okay. You were
It
so
makes
still. I
sense.
thought maybe you'd frozen.
Oh
Okay.
no 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 no! I was trying to catch up on the comments here a little bit.
Oh, that's
Um,
good luck with that. It's been great comments. I'm
well,
just way behind.
I think there's Esri. There's a lot of
Okay, forget the Garrett counseling scene. Okay,
no,
move past
I
that.
am. We've done that. Um, but when it comes to disappointment, I'm not going to talk about character disappointment and Jadzia Dax dying and Terry Farrell not being in the final
Right,
season.
right,
Like
right,
we've
right.
talked about that stuff. But I think there are moments of disappointment between our characters in season 7 where they might be expecting more Jadzia out of Esri. And Esri is not Jadzia. There are elements of Jadzia that are in her, but she's also trying to figure out who
I think
Esri
that's a line.
was. Yeah, I think that's yeah. She's trying to figure
She
out
says,
who
"I'm
was
not Jadzia."
Esri, and now who is Esri Dax, and there are a lot of expectations. It kind of reminds me, Larry, of when you meet someone who you knew after a long period of time and things have changed. Maybe they've
Mm-hmm.
lived in a different environment. Maybe they've gone through an experience. Maybe they went to college and came back, and now they see things differently. Maybe they've experienced a loss. Maybe they've stuff happens. People change, and
Fallen victim to a weird ideology.
Oh,
They've
well,
joined a cult of one kind or another somehow. Yeah.
sure, there's a lot of that happening nowadays. So the expectations and the disappointment we might have that like we can pick up exactly where we were instead of trying to understand who is this person now. It gets back to what we were talking about with Harry Kim, when you have these big expectations of what might be and how you can be very disappointed in that. I think Esri's a good example of that, and that's an angle, a texture to this canon that I had not thought of before. I think that's actually a great moment
Hmm.
with Esri, and something that she does bring here. There's two more
Welcome.
recent ones, and then I want to take some comments here. We talked to Picard here. There's a lot of
Yeah.
disappointment actually when it comes to the storyline in Star Trek Picard.
And I thought about for a second, and we've talked about it. I thought about Raffi not being able to reconnect with her son on the eve of having a grandchild. But we've talked about that before in other
Yes.
contexts. So, but one I thought one that did spring to mind, and Scott backed me up on this, was Elnor.
Yeah.
Now, when they re-meet, in feeling disappointed, now you could say, do you elevate that to abandonment? But then it didn't haunt him for his whole life. He got over it, even though he whips out the old sword when he sees Picard. So it could have gone to murderous rage. Oh no, he's not murderously cool in his in his way. But that was young Elnor there, being disappointed that Picard was going away and he might not, not to know that right then that he wouldn't see him for years and years and years. And obviously it's a disappointment that he got over, and maybe he's had a little bit of trust issues when they would go off on away missions, but he was still so young, older teenage or whatever, that he could deal with it.
Yes. Yes. The
But it's a childhood.
Romulans.
It's room for a childhood disappointment there. So
Um, I think what's nice about that storyline is it makes personal the Romulan disappointment in Picard, in Jean-Luc Picard, not the show Picard, but also the disappointment that Picard has with the Federation, and all of that breakdown. I think Elnor is the personification of all of that, and what happened, and it makes very personal the people whose lives have been left behind when these crises happen. Like, Picard season 1 has its ups and downs. I think and who knows what's going to happen season 2. All I know is Seven of Nine is driving a Ford SUV, and that is not a sight I ever expected to see in Star Trek. But
you're
Elnor,
expecting a Chevy, a GMC?
Seven strikes me as someone. She would drive a more efficient vehicle. Um, I think she would drive
She
more.
would have driven an efficient vehicle back in the day, but now it's like, give me whatever the hell works. I'll take it.
Maybe, yeah, maybe, yeah, maybe you're on something there, Larry.
You're
Um,
romanticizing seven in. You get up with the times. Yeah.
the thing about Elnor is he's a good representation of the people who are left behind when these larger agencies turn their back on the plight of people during
Hmm.
these large scale crises. So, as a stand in for refugees right now in many parts of the world that are being
Hmm.
driven away from their homes due to climate related crises or geopolitical related crises or crumbling governments or war, Elnor's
Or
a
as pawns,
or as pawn. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
like on the Polish-Byelorussian border. Those were mostly people brought in to create a tension.
I think a lot about you look back on you look at what's happened in Afghanistan and compare that with Picard. I think you can see Elnor and what happens to Picard and why he leaves and why the Federation does what it does. I look at what happened to Afghanistan this year, and I think there are a lot of parallels here. So I think that's Elnor. is a very good personification of these themes. And unfortunately, there's no straightforward answer here. Again, I know I bring this up all the time, but a Private Little War, there's no
Right.
easy answer to what to do.
But can I just say, just
Please.
like Discovery Season 3 and the real life pandemic, that Elnor subplot texture level of Picard Season 1, way before the Afghanistan situation fell apart that way.
Yeah.
Just some very prescient moments there from Star Trek that weren't even intended. They weren't on the nose because they couldn't have been.
Yeah, and this is when speculative fiction and science fiction do their thing very well. They are able to see these specific patterns in history that repeat themselves, package it in a way that helps you think and get out of your biases, and might help you to see the world right now in a new way. I think that's when Star Trek does its thing the best. It's that, it opens you up to a new perspective and gives you some hope too, some way forward. So I think season 1 of Picard gave us some of that. One more, and this is a very fun one, Larry, to wrap up our briefing.
I was so
room.
proud that I thought of this, although somebody
I love this example, and this
because I thought this was the perfect framing of what we were doing today. Yeah,
and this one comes from Latter-day Saints. I mean, Lower Decks, LDS.
Thank you.
This one
it's like the world doesn't know that LDS stands for Latter-day Saints, but anyway. So it's like the world didn't ever get the full intent of the joke in Star Trek 4 when he says LSD.
He did a little too much LDS back at the
LDS. People are like, oh, he meant LSD. It goes, yes, but also LDS is the Mormon.
No, it's such a good. I know.
I think it got me that half the world forgot the other half of the 2 levels of the joke. But anyway,
she looks at him like, it's so good. So good. What a great
it's
movie.
San Francisco, but it's only, it's 2 states away from, Nevada has a huge Mormon population.
Larry, the problem with Star Trek 4 is when you reference it, it makes me immediately want to watch it. That's the problem. I'm like, well, I guess I know what I'm doing today. I'm going to have to watch Star Trek 4.
Well, you know what? And here, this will make you feel good. Happy 35th birthday this year, Star Trek 4.
Oh, 34. 35? 34?
35, I meant. Did I say 34?
I don't know 35. What you said. I don't know.
I meant to say 35 because First Contact is 25.
On this anniversary of the 35 years of Star Trek 4, may we wish a fond adieu to the whales.
On the silver jubilee of...
Again, our apologies to the monarchists. Okay.
All one half of them.
Lower Decks. So in this episode, I forget what episode this is, Larry, but our captain is trying to get into this.
The Duplers.
The Duplers, yeah. Captain's trying to get into...
the new sitcom. Follow Lower Decks. Thursday nights at 9 on NBC. Okay. No.
They're trying to get into this very exclusive captain's party and are not able to. And we see the disappointment. I mean, it's right there. You see it right there on the steps.
Well, first the Lower Deckers couldn't get in.
Yes.
And they're in the bar there drowning their sorrows to some extent.
Where Kirk and Spock did the same.
Right. So then we have the Echo. It's a great crew bonding moment. So what I wanted to say was we're talking about disappointments that don't grow into bigger diagnoses, but disappointments in how we handle them. So like maybe you have a breakup and it's not the end of a world breakup, and maybe you have a huge disappointment socially, but it's just not getting into the party you wanted. So it's not the end of the world, and so maybe the thing you do is, and I don't want to intrude on the counselor's log here, but it's like maybe just go get drunk. Don't go. I'm not saying go get wasted, but just have a drink or two and get over it, and go there with buddies and get over your hassle, and so you can get on with life again. Therapy. And I thought that was not only a great one where they do it once, but it's like the 2 echelons of the ship have a bonding moment.
Yeah, it's really well done, and it does get to that expectation that like I would have so much fun there. I would have status. I would be seen. I can mingle. Like this would mean I am of the same caliber as those other captains that get onto all those cool missions. I thought that was a really great story, and Star Trek was it's exploring Star Trek in a very different way, and it gets to that sense of higher expectations when they're not met equals higher disappointment. I love that example, Larry, and it's a really great episode too. There's a few other ones that our community brought up. A couple of people mentioned the motion picture and Decker towards Kirk in the motion picture when he takes over command. He makes his disappointment pretty clear there.
Right.
And his frustration, and that kind
But
of.
he does his job.
He does.
He doesn't negate doing his job. In fact, he saves them by doing his job when he could have been pissed and just died, but with a smile on his face.
Yeah. Gosh, this makes me want to watch the motion picture again. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I love the motion picture. I will always defend the motion. Apparently, I love defending the movies people like less. I love defending the motion picture. I think it's the idea of humanity just sent out Voyager and seeing this movie about V'ger coming back. I think that's just really beautiful. It's such a Star Trek story. I love the camaraderie in Star Trek V. I will defend that one. I love that we finally got to see the Romulans on the big screen in Star Trek Nemesis. I really enjoy Star Trek 2009. I love Star Trek Beyond. Yeah, the one I can't really defend too much is Insurrection. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. Anyways, the motion picture.
And Insurrection could have been better if it hadn't had so many cooks trying to stick their thumb in the soup or whatever the bad metaphor is.
Yes.
It was I think it was probably the most political movie. Political, I don't mean political like liberal conservative. I mean so many people having their hand in the pot. If they just let Michael write the movie he wanted to write with some original notes, it would have been much better. But
yeah, I think the same is true, but probably to
it was committed to death.
Same is true from a different angle related to Generations. The laundry list of commands or requirements that Ron Moore and Brannon received. You know, we need Kirk. Kirk needs to die. Enterprise D needs to be there. Give us B too. Kill off the Enterprise D. Lursa and Betor, have them show up and then get rid of them. It's like, how are you supposed to make this movie?
Use data in the emotions chip.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh man. Charlotte says, all I can think about regarding disappointment is when Picard tells Data that sometimes you lose through no fault of your own. That is not failure, that is life. Ooh, Charlotte.
Yeah, what's his exact quote is something like, sometimes you do everything right and you still lose.
Yeah, it's better said than what we're saying. But, when I was having this discussion with a good friend of mine about Picard and Kirk, and how Kirk gives us speeches, but Picard tends to be a man of very few words. But when he says things, they really sink in. And that is one of those moments. The first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth. Like there's these moments that Picard just lays a truth bomb on you.
Well, we're supposed to be exploring, finding new life. Well, there it sits.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
What a moment. What a moment that is. Is that Measure of a Man? Yeah. Oh gosh, one of the greatest.
Shut Up, Wesley. Really profound. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, couldn't resist that. Yeah.
Type aw. That's one of my favorites.
What's the one from the Drumhead about with the first? With the first, whatever the chain is forged.
Yeah.
Is it that or is it anyway?
Yeah,
There's a line in that, or chain of command. Maybe it's chain of command. Anyway, there's a good torture line. There's a good thing about
there are
witch
five
hunts, and
lights. The Christoph says,
it's a great metaphor, but not great. Yeah.
four lights. Sorry. The Christoph says the person most disappointed with Ezri was Ezri's big business mother, which I think is it leads into Zahir's comment here.
Mrs. Tegan. Yes.
That's good.
Parent-child disappointment runs through Trek.
Yeah,
right.
runs through Trek and other
right.
shows. Sarek, Spock, Worf, Alexander, Quark, Nog, Julian with his parents. Oh yeah, that's a good one. I forgot about that. Tom Paris, Philippa, and Michael. Yeah, Zahir. Wow. Ooh, maybe that's a theme for a future episode, Larry.
Yeah, I think so. We just had the show. There's the show outline right there.
Yeah, there's a show.
Thanks,
yeah.
Zahir.
Let me just take a screenshot of this one.
Can you make that into a tax deduction, Zahir? That's great. That was.
That's a good one. We haven't really talked about parent-child relationships. We've talked about relationships, but not in this way. That's a really good one, Zahir. And then Dan says it really well to sum it all up. I am not a merry man. Disappointment in a nutshell. Well said, Dan. Well, we have. I think we've exhausted that, Larry. Let's open up the counselor's log.
Phew. Yeah.
This is the part of the show where I do a little bit deeper dive into some of the psychology and mental health of what we're talking about in this week's episode. And this week we're talking about disappointment, Larry. This was a pretty. It's not a topic I would say I have explored in great depth, like just thinking about it. It's something I've dealt with a lot when I'm working with people, but it's not something that people tend to come in seeking help for a lot. It's more the implications of the disappointment that people want to talk about. But this is one of those emotions that's on the spectrum of sadness. Sadness is usually about some type of loss, loss of opportunity, loss of a person, loss of time, all of those kind of things. But the specific thing about a disappointment is you have certain expectations, and those expectations have not been met. And it often can last for hours or days. But one of the things that I found was interesting about disappointment is when people don't really have much of a chance to cushion their expectations and to sort of prepare for the possibility that this might not work. Disappointment seems to be much bigger and harder to deal with. So I was talking about Harry Kim before, and I think you brought up a really good point about Harry is he's young, he's inexperienced, and he is likely he seems to be much more of an optimist until you see him in Timeless, the 100th episode, where he's really struggling with the consequences of what he went through, trying to save Voyager here, bring him back home. But he is much more of an optimist, and there seems to be some data that indicates people who tend to be more optimists might struggle with disappointment more because they tend not to cushion their expectations and to prepare for the potential that things might not work out. This also, I think, ties into what we're seeing right now with the fandom, Larry. People, our global fans, had no ability to prepare themselves for this disappointment. We go back a week ago, Larry, most people weren't thinking, hey, Discovery might get pulled. This isn't one of those situations. I'm trying to think of a parallel here, Larry. Maybe when Discovery was first announced, and it was also announced that this was going to be on CBS All Access in the United States. Right. But globally, there was a lot of uncertainty. What's going to happen in Canada? What's going to happen in Europe? What's going to happen in Asia? CBS at that time didn't make any announcements. So more global community had time to think like, well, maybe it might not air here, maybe it will. I don't
Right.
know.
Right. It'll be like the 80s and 90s again. We'll just have
Yes,
to get it delayed, you know.
yes. But
They'll make us buy DVDs, right, or something. Yeah.
here this week there was no warning most people had that hey, this thing that's being heavily promoted by the cast, by marketing, you might not see it. Um, so those times where the expectations can't be tempered is when disappointment seems to be the highest, and when disappointment might also lead to anger, frustration, and
Yes.
all of that kind of stuff.
Well, to me, the thing was that's the sore spot. That's like the stab wound. But then, as you lay there bleeding, you have time to the next thing is you process. Well, now wait a minute. It's not like it's not like they showed up and said, "Oh, by the way, it's going off Netflix, and now you have to buy it on a new channel." And here's the new channel. That's not what happened. That would have made a lot of people angry, but they would have, most people would go, rah, rah, rah. They would have either done it or they would have got their friends or whatever. But the thing that I think was even worse than the sting of the having the rug, jerked out, was I like, really, I'm supposed to sit here for like not in my initial pain, but 4, 5, 6, we can't tell you a date. Maybe there won't be a date for years if I live in a small country. You can't tell me how and when I'm going to be able to see it. And meanwhile, I have to sit here with the US and Canada talking about it
Yeah.
for 5, 6 months. There's been a lot of I'm way behind the chat, gang, but there's been a lot of pirate jokes like, shiving me timbers are ahead, warp factor, put it on view screen, arg, and stuff in the chat. But that's kind of like people are saying, you want me to be a fan of this, but you're going to do this to me while and they don't begrudge the Americans, and thankfully people aren't begrudging I had one or two people think it was a huge conspiracy and everybody was in on it, and DST London was just for show. But I told a few people this week, I have been on maybe this should have been my K3. I've been within the corporation, either as a licensee with the magazine or the first few years of StarTrek.com corporately, where blunderful, stupid things were done by somebody in the corporation, and we were on the front lines having to, not defend it, but get around it, and internally going, "Oh my God, why did they do that? Like, that is the stupidest thing ever." And I've ticked off a few times. That could be a whole new show sometime, but I've been there. I know. Fans think that the corporation is acting like a monolith when there are all kinds of people inside who either argued a certain way and got overruled or weren't even in the room. They were like 19 levels below where the decision was made. But they're the people on the front lines, and they're the forward-facing, public-facing folks that have to make. Like, people were pissed about the PR announcement they put up as it blew up, and there was the posting, and they made apologies. The PR people did to make a statement, and then they ended it up with the tagline for the season. Michael saying, "Let's fly." And it was like it was the most tone deaf thing.
It was, yeah.
To say, "We're really sorry you're not with us. We're really sorry we're not with us. We're trying to get it to you as soon as we can. Blah 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 blah. But for now, let's fly." And like, really, you just poked him in the eye again
Yeah,
at the
no.
yeah.
And Larry, I appreciate what you wrote on social about let's be kind to the people on Paramount and Star Trek
Right. The
PR and
lower
social media.
of Paramount Plus.
Yeah, I mean they're trying to do an impossible thing, which is still promote this. They weren't involved in any of this, and now they're also taking the backlash. One of the things Libby said over here is, remember back in the day when Trek fans were disappointed and we flooded Paramount or NBC or whomever with good old-fashioned handwritten letters. And this is where we kind of toyed around with the topic of injustice here. And there's an element of that here where this is
a lot
not
of
fair.
second-class citizenship that the world fans are feeling.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. This is not fair, and injustice can often lead to a sense of anger, and anger can break you out of your daily routines and lead to something like a letter writing campaign, like what we saw with the original series. So, it's. and Dan also says there was no apologies in the announcement, and that's the part of what annoyed some fans so much. We're also, one of my frustrations with Paramount Plus has been not all of Star Trek is there. I think now, Larry, all the movies are there.
Well, I mean, now a lot of this is just, I get it. There's contracts they have to
There's
they have to wait
licensing,
for
yeah.
contracts to expire. I mean,
Yeah.
I get that. That's going to be, obviously they want everything to be unified. Although they did just let some things out. What was it? They let something out in the last 6 months, 9 months to go to other places. I forget what it was. Some of the movies or some of the series were allowed to be somewhere else
Yeah.
in a new deal. But whatever.
Yeah.
It must have been strategic for the moment.
It's all very complicated. I want to give them I want to pay them to keep making Star Trek and show my support. But I also, if you're doing these 4K re-releases, like, give us the 4K versions on Paramount Plus. Do in much the same way as when we had the HD remaster of the original series in the Next Generation. Eventually, those HD remasters found their way to Netflix and now Paramount Plus. So I am happy to pay for the streaming if it's fair, if it's a quality product that you are releasing here. And yeah, anyways, I think I've kind of given the highlights of the counselor's log here, Larry. I am very excited for the K3 you've got. I know what the topic is going to be, but I don't know what the outcome is going to be. So, Larry, if you might take us through the K3, this deep dive into a little bit of Star Trek history that we might not be aware of here.
Right. And K3, I usually say it's behind the scenes with the shows. And I thought about going there. There have been some sublime cases of disappointment inside the inner ranks. Like Bob Justman continuously, starting with third season, Bob Justman who was titled back in the day was associate producer, which I think of as like Mary Richards on the Channel 12 News on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Or there are a lot of that's the entry level producer. But Bob Justman was not entry level. He was like the right hand. He was like the producer. He was like the Rick Berman when Gene was alive of the original series. He was the Rick Berman of Next Gen era when Gene was alive, but on the original series to Gene, he was the producer, the line producer, basically. And he had no title that reflected that because he was youngish. And third season, when Gene pulled back, he thought that he would get promoted, and they brought Fred Freiberger in, which was a big disappointment to him. But he soldiered on until he just left it for exhaustion. Same way that happens off and on over time with a lot of shows. People get overlooked, and they either decide to stick around or they don't. The one I almost focused on here was, and I almost did pictures for all this, but I thought, no, I'm going to save it for the big one. But Chris Black, who came in midway through first season on Enterprise and was a good soldier and came in with the Andorian episodes and wrote some great episodes and was an old school fan himself, in the Ron Moore, Brian Fuller, Renee Echevarria mold, came in and was there first season and second season and wrote Xindi shows. And then when basically UPN made Ron and Rick and Brannon step back, and have somebody else show run it on that bought off the year that was paid for that would have not existed the fourth season. And one of their stipulations was you two step back and let somebody else run the show hands on, which wasn't put that way at the time, but that's what it was. But Chris was a little Manny Cotto, who we all go, oh, he did such a great job with the last season. Too bad he wasn't running the show the whole time. When he came in the third season, he wrote the Similitude episode and made a big splash, and made a big impact. And when it came time to pick who would be the not Rick and Brannon went with Manny and not Chris, who had been there since first season. And Chris Black was very disappointed and decided that he should look elsewhere for the fourth season. So professionally, those kind of things happen. And in Star Trek, we see them through the lens, So, okay, I mentioned those. There's lots of other professional disappointments. And I'm saying this, I'm not talking about like when, you know, Denise Crosby was disappointed at the development of Tasha Yar and left the show, or Will was disappointed at the development of Wesley, or Terry Farrell was disappointed that she got handed this ultimatum, and when she was trying to do two shows at once and they killed her. I mean, that's almost expected, but they're still unfortunate, or Gates being disappointed to be run off by Maury Hurley, and then which is no. I'm going to do one this week, not about the history of the show, but the history of the fandom, because of what's going on right now, and just remembering how everybody was so upset and disbelieving in the fallow times when there wasn't even actual Star Trek being made, and go back to 2008, when of the three parties involved in Star Trek The Experiment, which was the studio, the hotel, and now the new owner when this Paramount Parks was sold off to a company called Cedar Fair, there was a triangle of people, and the 10-year contract for the experience was up, and one of the three had no interest in renewing it at all, which was the Hilton Hotel. So the first K3 I've got here is a picture to the late, great, belated, the front door where you could see both levels.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah. Star Trek The Experience. Yeah. So you went down into the shops. You went down into the shops in Quark's Bar. You went up to get into the queue for the museum, and then to go take the ride, or the two rides. And as you went down, there was a long, like a wheelchair accessible, disability stairwell on the left. As you walked in, there was a long thing. So when they announced that it was going to close on Labor Day of 2008, no hope for bringing it back. So the last Vegas convention, and they weren't even STLV then because we didn't have hashtags yet. The last Vegas con was the 2008 in August, and then it closed in September. And all that last few weeks, the wall where the ramp down was a long wall. So go ahead and show the next couple. People, the experienced people who were all brokenhearted about having to leave, left out Post-its. So people started, it was like when Princess Diana died or 9/11, people started leaving memorials on that wall. And you can see they're big, small, little people put their memories. People were just really grieving. I mean, this is a case where disappointment turns into grieving almost. Yeah. But people were hugely disappointed. You can see the ramp down. I had a lot of these pictures I could put up. This is from the closing weekend. But here's a couple of close-ups. You can see people leaving. Please don't boldly go.
Boldly go. Seeing this one just brought a tear to my eye.
I first came to you in 1997, been back every year since. This place was awesome, and Vegas will suck a little more even without it.
I think it will suck a lot more without it.
And they closed because the Hilton was just so sure that the space was being wasted. Within a year, they were going to have a Michael Jackson museum in that space. Well, guess what? The next year came, the next Vegas, and Creation stayed there for a couple of years to see what it felt like. And the next year, they put up this big wall where the original opening that we saw in the beginning, and they put up ads for all their restaurants. There's no Michael Jackson museum. There's no nothing. And that was before, the Michael Jackson reality hit. But that was the big thing, why we had to get rid of it, because this is old, and we could make a lot more ROI if we had something more up-to-date and spiffy and not Star Trek. Well, two things. A, they never had anything in there, and they put up that big wall. And B, the Hilton slowly spiraled in and lost their branding. But what's great is by the next Vegas, people were going over to the wall and mocking them for closing. And somebody brought tons of Post-its and pens and left them there. And people started, it was like Memory Wall 2. And people were leaving all kinds of notes and messages. Some of them were sarcastic by now. But yeah, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. That was one I liked. I got but you saw how the immensity of it was. And there's a couple more I sent you. We want our Warp Core breach drinks, which was the late great, the big smoking bowl thing.
I love when you ordered at Quark's Bar, when they brought you the bill, they said, "Here's your damage report." I love that so much.
And then this was a great one to end up with disappointment, I think. So somebody put a little Borg out there and said, "Well, we will adapt. Like we will be resilient and move on." But that was a wall.
Little Borg drawing too. How cute
Yeah,
is that?
but that I just thought that was a great thing to talk about. The initial disappointment, like the impending doom. We can't believe this is happening. We even knew up front disappointment, and then a year later, still disappointed. A little bit of eye roll and a little bit of snark, but still disappointed. But we will go on. So I thought that was so. There's your K3, something you knew about, but maybe you hadn't seen illustrated so well.
Larry, this is really great, and I had never seen any close-ups of these post-its. I knew a little bit about what was going on
I
with the
have a few.
closing, but I never seen any of the stuff. And that Borg one is just so incredibly cute. I love that, and it's a great
There were
message.
tons of cute. There were tons. I don't have a photo of everything. I back in the day with my Hi8, not HD camera. The first couple, this was the first year I had my blog and was doing videos. And you can go back to my old legacy blog and go back, and I have an interview with Chad Boutte, who was the last manager at the Experience. Although he's become a not positively viewed figure for some of the things he pulled at the shutdown, but I have an interview with him where some fan left a mock Cisco baseball that was signed
Oh
like mock
wow!
signatures. And
Oh
they left
wow!
it there at the little stand where you could get a pen and write something. And he was showing, he's like, for some reason, we're doing this interview. And he goes, and for some reason, some fan left a baseball. And I was like,
Oh my
well, you
gosh!
do know that was an emblem from DS9. And he was like, oh, it was? I'm like, okay, fine.
Oh my
You know,
gosh!
anyway.
Oh my gosh!
Anyway, so there's your K3 for the week. I hope you enjoyed it, everybody.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I think Libby summarized it a little well here, where she says, "I wish I could have seen Quark's Bar. Sigh, I couldn't afford it at the time. I think it's
Yeah.
my biggest fanish disappointment. I remember Larry telling me about it before it opened. Sigh.
Ooh,
I think a lot of people felt that way. They couldn't have made it to Vegas and they never got to see it.
a double disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to go twice, 2 times when I lived out in LA. It wasn't that difficult of a trip to get there. It wasn't that bad of a drive, and it was magical, Larry. It was really magical that going on beaming up was absolutely magical, and what a great place that was. It brought back the same feelings I had when I was able to go to the Paramount parks and meet a Klingon and the Star Trek Earth tour that happened before Generations came out, and to see Star Trek
Hmm.
alive and being celebrated and being able to participate in that was so joyful. And then the sadness I had when Paramount Parks pulled out, and so did the licensing for all the Star Trek stuff from my local theme park, and then similar
Great America.
Great America. Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah.
I went so many times and had so much cool Star Trek experiences over there.
And that was a lightweight. I never was there, but we had the last issue of the Communicator that was all ready to go to press and got yanked when Decipher all but went bankrupt. But we had an article from oh my gosh, was it David Maddox? I had an article from a writer that wrote about being a character at Great America, and it was great because it wasn't Vegas, but it was what Paramount was doing at some of the other to give people a little Star Trek in a small way. Maybe with a branded ride. There was a Carowinds in the South that had a Borg roller coaster or something.
Yeah.
But they would try to have 2 or 3 costume characters. It was a fraction of what you got in Vegas, with all and they're running. The characters in Vegas had a running to give themselves some meaning. They had a running storyline, like people interacted and people had back. They weren't just random characters. Like I'm a random Klingon, a random Borg, and a random Ferengi. They had names, and they even had a reason for why they called the Experience the time station. Like, why are we here in 1998 Las Vegas, or 2002 Las Vegas? Why are we here? And they had a whole thing made up that it was like a time force field vortex, and they were like a shimmering little.
Well, this is what I love.
Anyway, it was but what you were talking about was how Paramount at least tried to bring a taste of that to all the other parks, and it's awesome. And this guy wrote an article about what that was like at Great America. But it's awesome that you have such great memory of it.
Oh, nothing but fond memories. And what I loved is how serious how seriously the people took their roles, and how much they would create this head canon for why they're here.
Well, they
I
were
mean,
also most of them are all real actors, and they had to do something to not go crazy.
yeah, and real fans, real actors, and real
And
fans who really really took the job seriously of bringing the joy to people's lives. So, yeah, thank you for that, K3 Larry. I liked that one. Um, an away mission. This is the part of the show where I give you some way to apply the stuff we're talking about. And again, this is I'm talking more directly to our global community of fans here. As I said earlier in the counselor's log, usually disappointment only lasts a few days. And usually you get some time and space and distance from whatever the expectation that hasn't been met. That's going to be hard in this situation, Larry. For the next 10, 12, 13 weeks, I don't know how long the season is, people are going to be consistently reminded of new Discovery episodes. We're trying to handle it as respectfully as we can here with the way we do our show. We won't be spoiling anything, but the marketing, all of that sort of stuff, any fans you have or friends you have across country lines, some might have access, some might not. Podcasts, news, things that you might watch and listen to.
I've seen a lot of hosts talking about how they're going to try to handle it and minimize it, or put the spoilers at the end of their shows. I've seen everybody having to. The Americans, my initial instinct was like, we need to know what's going on and not be arrogant, number one, and not be oblivious, and have some feelings for everybody, because here we try to be global and be united, and nobody's left behind, and then something you get thrown a curveball like this. So I've seen people trying to react to the situation, what we're talking about doing. Exactly. Yeah.
And normally, if someone is really struggling with disappointment, as a psychologist, one thing I would try to get at is, what does a disappointment mean to them? And then also, let's look at the expectations you had. And this is kind of what I would do with Harry Kim. Try to help him to get to a place of having more realistic expectations. I think the expectations the global fan community had here were right on. There's nothing wrong with the expectations, because for the last few years, they've had Discovery when everyone else has had Discovery. That's been the expectation. So
they did last weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
From the corporation and its employees.
So it's not, my away mission isn't about recalibrating your expectations. They were just fine. One of my away mission recommendations, if this is hard for you, I would really consider muting some of the social media accounts that might be difficult for you. If they're giving you reminders of new Discovery, if they're talking about this sort of stuff, mute those, or mute terms like Star Trek Discovery or Discovery or hashtag Discovery. Mute them for the next few weeks, for the next few months, until you're able to access it. That's one way to create a little bit of distance here. The other thing that you can do is it's always helpful to put words to the experience that you're having. Finding a way to share, as we had earlier, a few people were talking about what Discovery means to them, what Star Trek means to them, what it means to have this loss, what that feeling is. As much as you can put words to experiences, that helps. And then, Larry, the other thing I want to say here, this gets back to, I think you have summed it up really well here, is we will adapt.
I thought you'd like that.
I love
it. Yeah,
I love it. I love that drawing of the Borg. I am in love with that one. And so what I mean by this is the fandom community has always adapted, as we are here with Life Support Live. People will life will find a way. Oh wait, I just quoted Jurassic Park. Wrong franchise. Whoops.
Okay.
Yeah, crossing the streams there. But people will find a way to adapt, and whether that means buying this season when it's out on DVD in America, or getting your American friends, or other ways, or VPNing, I don't know. People are going to adapt, and Discovery will be there for you one way or another, and you will be able to access it. So I wish I had an easier solution here, an easier recommendation, Larry. But I think if
Yeah.
this is particularly difficult for you, I would mute and create some distance between you and the websites and accounts that might be reminding you of this disappointment.
And maybe if you have cross pond close friends or close online buddies or whatever, maybe if you have the wide world, take your advice with, but maybe if you have some close friends, just ask them to, if they're that good a friend, even if online, ask them to maybe go easy with you, or
Yeah,
rather than having to use your
yeah,
best friends.
yeah. And to the people who are able to access Discovery, please do not spoil this for others. Do not reveal stuff that's going on, give impressions or anything like that. It's a
Without at
big
least a tag. I mean, without at least a spoilers tag or
yeah.
something.
I mean, I think one of Discovery is so serialized, unlike Lower Decks. It is one grand story each season, and I think everyone deserves to be able to see that at their own pace when they're able to access it. So Larry, let's this has been a long one actually today. Hailing frequencies open. There's a few
Yeah, I'm not disappointed. Yeah.
there's a few comments I kind of flagged here. Charlotte said, Picard walks softly but carry a big stick. Kirk hurls a whole tree trunk into the array and then can go charging in with a war cry. I think I know who Charlotte's favorite captain is there. Mike says, the experienced Klingon actor was so kind to my wife. She rides a mobility scooter, and he asked her if this was a top secret Federation warship. Such a great guy. They had such a great way of
Yeah.
finding, of creating these like mini joyful moments of connection with Star Trek. They're so
The
wonderful.
Ferengis, the Klingons, the Vulcans, yeah, were the main characters. And a lot of those actors love doing that. And there's a lot of them that are still kind of. There was a 15th anniversary party that I missed at the beginning. I mean, there's the opening and the closing that kind of get celebrated. And there was a 20th anniversary of the opening a couple years ago, January 2018. And I went over for that one and stayed the night. And we took I sent back a lot of live video, which is up if anybody wants to see it, up on my Facebook page. But a lot, there were at least like, because there were the characters that did the Quarks roaming that were in character, different alien races. Then there were the characters who were in the live action segments of the ride. And then there were the employees that worked in the stores and Quarks. And a lot of the people that worked in the ride is like human Starfleet, the people that did the lines and the rides. Some of them also had costume characters that did wandering, So anyway, and the Borg encounter had Borg in it. And I think there were one or two wandering. It makes no sense rationally, but there were one or two, like I think they were liberated Borg who would walk around in the cafe later on, like not waste. If they had a shift on the ride, I think there were one or two that did that. They would come out and be a character and not waste the makeup hours, But
Yeah,
no, it was they
I
did it. They really went out of their way to make it a great experience for people, whether they took the ride or they just came to Quarks. And here's the other thing: the locals. My friend that used to work at the Review Journal, she told me this, and I saw it a lot. And then you would see it in the memory wall. There were a lot of just local Vegas people, whether they were Trek fans or not, who loved eating at Quarks because they said it had great food and I
yeah.
guess great prices and easy parking. And they would run over there on their lunch hours and have lunch at Quarks. I'm just amazed.
The first time
Right.
I went to the experience, Larry, I took the Klingon encounter, or that's not the. I don't think Klingon encounter is the name of the ride.
It was either the Klingon
The Borg
adventure,
encounter 4D.
Borg encounter, Klingon invasion. It was
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
The first time I took it, and the part where you get to the bridge of the Enterprise D, the ride broke down, and we were kind of we were stuck there. And one of the repair guys came out and said, in not Star Trek uniform, like, he was trying so hard. He was like, the Klingons have gotten us stuck here, but feel free to roam around the bridge. And I was actually excited. My friends who had been on this ride many times, they felt so bad for me. But I was excited, Larry, because we got to roam around the bridge for so
Without being
long.
hustled off in a minute.
Yeah, and I took a picture in the captain's chair. It was a ton of fun. We all really enjoyed it. Raislin 53 here says, back when I used to live in Riverside, I used to make the 4-hour trek to Las Vegas just to sit at Quark's all weekend and ride the rides, and then drive back Sunday afternoon. Missed that place. It meant a lot to a lot of people. Charlotte has an example that we haven't quite discussed today, but she says, in some ways, I think disappointment is worse than sadness. Think about it from the other side of the coin, how crushing it is when someone you look up to says they're disappointed in you. I think we see that with the First Duty and Picard to Wesley. And you see how crushing that is, that disappointment. And he rises to the occasion after Picard has sort of reminded him of the First Duty. But Charlotte, I think you're absolutely right. When there's someone you really respect, admire, or love, and they are disappointed in you, it can be very, it can really make you feel such shame. So that's thank you for bringing that up. And then Rebecca corrected us.
We're not spoiling it, but there was a tinge of that in that exchange with Michael and the president.
Yes.
Also,
there's a little bit of that. Rebecca says, Larry, getting back to the quote, with the first link the chain is forged, Rebecca. The first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, changes us all irrevocably. That is the quote. Thank you for that, Rebecca. And we also...
worth remembering now, as much as it was as an homage to, or as a reminder of McCarthyism, it's relevant again today, sadly. So, yeah.
It's funny how history tends to do that. Tobias says, Klingon adventure, Borg invasion.
Thank you, Tobias.
Yeah.
Oh, and I did say Tobias earlier on reminded me it was Chuck, who was the older brother that went to college and was never heard from again on Happy Days. So thank you twice, Tobias.
Yeah.
Because the deal is the Klingon Adventure was not, the original name of the Klingon Adventure was Star Trek Experience: The Ride.
The Ride, yeah.
And there was no name until they came along with Borg, so then they had to retcon a name for
Yeah, it's like Star Wars and A New Hope. Yeah.
I saw Star Wars in 77. I don't know what you saw, but I saw Star Wars.
I was not around. Jarrod says, for those interested, we'll be doing a holiday Zoomy chatty thing on Thanksgiving night. I might have Rankin Bass holiday specialists in the background. So this does bring us to the end of the show here. And next week, Larry and I are off in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday break that we have here in the United States. So we will be off. Thank you, Jarrod, for hosting a Zoomy chatty thing next week as well as last week. We were off last week due to a couple of conflicts that Larry and I had. So thank you, Jarrod, for hosting that. I know those are bring a lot of they spark a lot of joy for our community over here. So thank you for that. Tobias, don't worry. We won't be spoiling Star Wars for you here. I won't tell you who is whom's
We'll
father.
let real Star Wars shows do that. Yeah.
Oh, man. Larry, until, we'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll have a lot to talk about. But until then, what's going on in Trekland?
Oh, well, we had our open house, I think, with Mike. You mentioned that's a big deal. I'm going to have I didn't send you anything. Wow. If anyone is going to try the little mini version of San Diego Comic-Con Thanksgiving weekend, post-Thursday, in San Diego, I will be there Saturday. I have a panel at 4:30. Just my fan forum. So if you happen to be there, it's live. It's going to be an experiment. But the weekend after that is the Nichelle Nichols Farewell Convention. Is finally going to happen as an adjunct to LA Comic-Con in downtown LA. A lot of people are coming into LA for that. It's not just regional. So if anyone listening live or later is coming in, look us up. I'll be there all weekend. I've got 3 or 4. I'm going to host, I'm going to moderate for Doug Jones and some other actors. I'm going to moderate a panel of Nichelle's family and old friends on Friday night. which is she won't be there, but we're going to have her. And Nichelle is going to be around in limited doses. And James Kerwin and I are going to do a panel about retconning and gaps filling and canon smoothing. So that's going to be an interesting adventure in finally doing that event, Nichelle's farewell. A ticket to one is a ticket to the other. So if you have a ticket to that, you can get into LA Comic-Con, which is 40, 50, 60,000 people and a lot of Comic-Con guests. And a ticket to the one is a ticket to the other. So that'll be fun. But I've got a Black Friday, Cyber Monday special coming. So if anybody's not on my list, go over to my page. I haven't put it up yet, but if you're on the list, you'll hear about it really soon. But you might check that out. It's a Portal 47 special. It's 6 months for the price of 5, and 3 bonus specials on top of that, some discounts and some other fun stuff. So that's what's happening.
There's a lot. It's busy, yeah. And some.
And I want to say real quick, on very short notice, I hate to say this, I'm waiting to hear back. There might be something special happening Monday, as in 2 days away. I've made a plan with somebody who's looking at other people, and we might throw something at Fandom on very short notice for an hour Monday evening. So just everybody stay tuned. I don't want to say anything more, but just be alert to that, okay? It'll be at 6, so it'll be kind of late for the Europeans, but 6 Pacific.
And that music means we're almost off. Thank you, Jarrod, for moderating. Thank you, Scott, for helping out with the show's production. And until next time, folks, live long and prosper.
I can't hear the music, but LLANP and